Please welcome to the stage Jane Porter.
Good morning, Ottawa. Creative Mornings, 11 years. 11 years. This is, I have to say, this is a bit of a come full circle moment for me because I was at the first Creative Mornings. This is a picture of the first Creative Mornings at a place called now Impact Hub Ottawa. This was at 71 Bank Street. The speaker was Manuel Baez, thank you, an architect at Carleton. And there I am. As a co-founder of Impact Hub Ottawa, I was introducing the venue at this time, and you can see Sharif and Mike there behind me. And what people didn't know at that time was that Mike and I were secretly dating. Still under wraps. And so actually, when they said, hey, it's been 11 years, and I started thinking about this, I was like, oh, it's 11 years. Hey, it's been 11 years. But I'm not really here to talk about the past or the future even. I'm here to talk about the present and accepting the present. Accepting what is here and now in front of us. Because I believe that the greatest challenge of our time is that we are not accepting the greatest challenges of our time. Think climate change, environmental tipping points, being at the knife's edge of democracy, social justice issues where we feel like maybe we take one step forward and sometimes 2 steps back. So I say the greatest challenge of our time is that we are not accepting the greatest challenges of our times. And I'm saying that because it's hard. It's heavy. It's overwhelming to think about. But I'm not just going to leave it at that, saying that we have to face reality. I'm going to talk about how can we face reality with grace for ourselves. How do we connect with ourselves, with our communities, and this world that we call home? And I'm talking about acceptance. Acceptance is such a beautiful word. And it's because acceptance is the first step in any healing journey. Any healing journey that you are on, you first have to accept. But I'm going to talk a little bit about me, just so you know a little bit about who I am and why I'm talking about this. And then I'm going to go through some ideas and tips in terms of how we do this, how we accept reality with grace. So I was born and raised, I'm third-generation settler here, born and raised in a place called Thunder Bay on the shores of Lake Superior. My grandpa used to say that when he was coming back to Thunder Bay, he could feel like the magnetism of Lake Superior, and he knew he was coming home just by the breathing it in. And when I go home, I feel that. I have very deep roots in Thunder Bay. But I'm not going to talk about all of my backstory, but I will share 2 threads that have been woven through my life. And the first thread is that I have a deep appreciation for nature. I grew up as a child in the 80s in the countryside of Thunder Bay. And so here are my sisters and I in our tree house. We played outside all the time. We even joined a club called Kids Saving the Earth at some point. Maybe other people did too in the 80s. And then when business school left me wanting more, I moved to Finland in a place where actually I lived quite sustainably, but to pursue my master's in corporate environmental management, because I felt like I needed to know more about how business worked together with the environment. And then I spent a career working in the environment and business. The second thread of my life is that I like to connect ideas and people across boundaries to do good. So whether or not that was in high school, bringing leaders together from across Northwestern Ontario, or whether it was helping to kickstart Impact Hub Ottawa as a co-working space for social impact professionals, whether it was working with industries and bringing stakeholders across the country together to talk about how to improve certain sectors, or in my latest venture, bridge building group, which is what I'm doing now as a professional facilitator. And I just want to help people have meaningful gatherings and conversations that will help accelerate change and heal divides. Another thing about me is I like metaphors. I use them a lot. So in preparing this speech, I felt like, I think I need a metaphor. So I'm gonna use the camera. And actually, I'm a really horrible photographer. And so even as you hear some of these, I'm not a good photographer, so never ask me to take a photo. But go with me here. I will be using the camera to help try and make more sense about what this means, about how to accept reality with grace. So the first one, zoom out. Zoom out. Understand the bigger picture. See, when I was in business school, I was taught how to, make something, sell something, to who, at what price, where. And I liked business school, but I was like, what about the materials that went into that product? Where is this product ending up afterwards? Who is making this product where? And the closest I got to talking about any of those environmental or social impacts in 4 years of business school was, I think, one class in ethics in my 4th year. That was it. This was the early 2000s. So I was like, we don't talk about it. And now they do a little bit more. But it's because social and environmental impacts are externalities. That's what I learned. They are external to the economics that we live in, like the economy that we live in. So we don't really take them into account. Which is why when we zoom out, outside of our bubbles, we see places like this. This last picture is the Great Barrier Reef, a before picture and an after. I just want you to pause. You can even close your eyes if you want. But when you look at these pictures, what arises in you? What sensations are you feeling in your body when you zoom out and you see the full picture? I'll tell you, I feel like an ick. I feel the weight. And I feel ashamed. I also feel happy that I don't get to see, I have to see it all the time. Which led me to, in learning more about this, I really wanted to dedicate my career to doing this. And so I worked as a management consultant focused on sustainability for about 12 years at a place called Stratos. Here I am at a mine. I did a lot of work in the mining, the oil and gas, the forestry sector on how to be better and not just say that they're being better, but actually put in practices, actually talk to different stakeholders and rights holders to be better. And I didn't, you see me in mining garb here. I worked at an office like just over there. This was not an everyday occurrence that I got to go to the mines. And it felt really good. It felt really good to feel like I was making an impact. And then, I came back from a mat leave, and as I was doing this work, my brain hurt. It's so hard to keep thinking about all of these issues and having to be on top of everything. And so, when a colleague of mine, in the most generous and supportive way, said, "What would unleash Jane? Like, what could we do to unleash you? We know you have more to give." Beautiful question. I was like, I need to leave. Like, thanks for I need to go. I need to do my own thing. Like, I have energy, I have something else to give. So I geared up. I had a new business idea. I quit my job. February 2020. So I quit my job. This happened. I'm sure we all know where we were when this happened. It's really, a weird time. All of a sudden, I was at home. The idea that I had made no sense in a pandemic world. I was stuck at home with my toddler, which really didn't bring the best out of me 24/7. And I started to spiral. I started to want to help because that's my go-to. I was like, I need to do something. I need to do this. I need to act. I need to do something. And I was kind of freaking out. And it was Mike who gave me the most beautiful question. Jane, stop. Stop. What do you want to do? What do you want to do right now? And focus on that. Stop thinking about business ideas. Wow. Which brings me to my next tip, is to zoom in. Zoom inwards. Go on an inner journey. So what I did, I bought a fancy notebook, and I was like, I'm going to get intentional. I'm going to do this. And then it didn't work. I was like, okay. And then on my Facebook, someone posted, a friend of mine said, hey, I'm starting a coaching circle for women. She was a professional coach. And I joined immediately. And then each week we talked on Zoom, but we talked and we had the most beautiful questions and teachings about where am I right now? What voices should I be listening to more in my head? What voices should I listen to maybe less? Maybe accept them, but listen to less. And what is the truest, most beautiful life I can imagine? By going inwards, by zooming in, I have another tip. A lot of your mental models start to reorganize in your brain when you start to go in. And so the reframe is an important one. And I was thinking, sustainability is more about connection. And so I used to think about sustainable development, and this is how I was taught, is that we have to think about it from the economy and the environment and society, and sustainable development is when you use all of those lenses and you make good decisions that way. It's still true. You still have to think about these lenses. But it's a really heady way of thinking about sustainable development, and sometimes you actually don't even know what it means. You just you use this language. And I reframed it. I said, sustainability is the connection that we have with ourselves, it's the connection that we have with each other, and it's the connection we have with this land. And if we do that, we will live sustainably. It's the disconnection at all of those levels that is leading us down this path. And so I reframed it. I'm going to talk a moment about the connection that we have with others. And see, if the pandemic showed us anything, it's that we need people. We need human connection, which is why all of you are probably here right now at Creative Mornings, because we have that human connection. The pandemic also taught us that there are some really deep divides, and that sometimes your reality is completely opposite from someone else's reality. And so for my next tip, it's to focus and to remember that two things can be true at the same time, and it really just depends on your focus. So I think everyone here knows what this is about. It's literally, we are right downtown. This was a year and a few months ago, right? The Ottawa Freedom Convoy. So I have my own thoughts about the convoy, but professionally, I was feeling like, hey, I'm about bringing people together to have hard conversations. That's my job. What better opportunity than the Freedom Convoy? And so I held Zoom calls with people who were for and against the convoy. 1 hour, mostly strangers, didn't know each other, and they were on the call. And in one example, I had a Calgary business person, I had an ICU nurse working the COVID floor, I had an unvaccinated woman living in Mexico because she couldn't come back to Canada, and I had a public health practitioner. Guess what? Nobody yelled. Nobody yelled at each other. If anything, humanity showed up on our call because the purpose was to listen, not to change anyone's minds. And so actually, the ICU nurse apologized to the unvaccinated woman to say, hey, nobody should be hurling threats at you. Nobody deserves that kind of behavior, like nobody. And then when the public health practitioner mentioned, hey, my dad is immunocompromised and I'm really worried about him, we all gave her a collective hug, virtual, but we felt the human connection when we let go of that tension that exists between us. And so I really enjoyed facilitating these conversations, but I realized that if it was longer than an hour, and if it went off the rails, I did not have the skill set to continue with those kinds of calls. And so, here's my next one, tripod. So when your hands are shaky, when you don't know what to do, get grounded. Get a better stance. So I deepened my facilitation journey. I spent a year becoming a certified integral facilitation. And integral facilitation has 3 legs on which it stands, which is perfect for my tripod analogy. I was really excited. And so it's about integral theory, and this theory about how everything is connected. Developmental psychology, so it helps you think about the person. It's not outcomes focused, it's developmentally focused. And Buddhism. And so when we say accepting the here and now, that's Buddhism. There's a lot more to Buddhism, I'm sure, but accepting the here and now, and it's all about presence. And so we practiced. We practiced about what happens when you are facing a threat, and that threat could be anything. So what do you normally do? You have a stress response. This is actually like a physical thing that happens in your body if you are facing a threat. You can fight, you can flee, you can freeze, you can fawn and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I know, I'm so sorry. And so in this journey, this facilitation journey, I learned more about how this is a way for us to accept the here and now, and even if it's a threat. How do you ground yourself? How do you let the threat pass through you? How do you pause and then get curious? And then how do you respond thoughtfully with choice? And so that you don't have to respond with the fight, flee, freeze, or fawn, that you can get grounded with yourself and respond with choice. So while I was doing this, I was facilitating a conversation with my peers as part of my practice, and I had to choose a question about what I was going to facilitate. And I chose this question. Are you doing enough? Think about the weight of the world and all of the challenges that we're facing. Are you doing enough? Let that sink in. My peers on the call, some froze, some broke down. Some talked about the creeping paralysis that they feel because they have kids and they just can't go there. And then I reframed it. I used the tool. And this was all in the moment, but I reframed it and I said, instead of asking, are you doing enough? Could you ask, What question can I ask myself that gives me space and room to act and to breathe? What question could you ask yourself? And so we went around. And in that moment, it had never really happened before, but I said, how do I lead with love so that I can act? It was like a magical moment that is still so pivotal in my life today, because as soon as I said those words, how do I lead with love? I reframed it. How do I lead with love? I felt lighter. I felt like, I've like tapped into some ancient wisdom or something here. And so how do I lead with love? And so when I think about this, it's actually changed everything. So before, when I thought about bridge building, I thought about dismantling barriers and building bridges and bringing people who don't like each other together in a room together. And I was like, this is hard. It's so hard, you know? And then when I said, wait, how do I lead with love to build bridges? That all of a sudden opened up all these new opportunities about actually maybe we focus on meaningful gatherings at the holidays. Because the holidays are when you are probably going to sit beside or have to talk to a family member who you disagree with. It's going to happen there. And how do you lead with love in that moment? When I think about climate change, now when I'm working with a client on climate change, I don't just talk about social, environmental, economic ideas. We ground it first. We talk, when we're thinking about climate change, what's the vision that we want to have for a little girl 150 years from now? What's that vision? That taps into something much deeper than up here. It taps into here. So I lead with love. Which brings me to my next tip. It's a question mark of, do we need a new lens? We have been, we've had so much wealth, so much growth. We've done so much with the current lens that we have, which is very linear, growth-oriented, brain-focused, dominance. And the question is, do we need a new lens? Because the fact is, everything I'm saying here is just my journey, but it's been written, in various cultures for thousands of years. So the question is, do we need a new lens? And I work with a lot of Indigenous groups. I work with many Indigenous facilitators as well, who are here in the audience. And there's a deep appreciation I have for the Indigenous worldview. Because you do zoom out 7 generations in the future, 7 generations behind. You do zoom in. You go on a more inner spiritual journey. You do focus and connect on others and all my relations, not just those who look like me, but others, and not just people, but animals and the land, everything, all my relations. There's something really beautiful about that lens. And so in my truest, most beautiful version of the world, we have truth, we have reconciliation, but we also have a deep appreciation where we stop, us settlers, where we listen and we learn from Indigenous peoples here. So I'm going to end with another one. I like this zoom tool. So I want you to zoom way, way out to here. Now, I know a lot about dinosaurs, more than most people. My 5-year-old son is a budding paleontologist, so I know a ton. And so, for example, did you know that we are closer in time to the T-Rex than the T-Rex was to the Stegosaurus? Dinosaurs lived here for hundreds of millions of years. And there's something about that zooming out where you go millions of years back and then you almost think about the cosmos And then think about how infinitely small you are right now, here, in this moment. That is freeing. It makes me actually feel like so small in the best way. Because I am able, when I do that, when I zoom way out and I focus just on the here and now, I do that. And we can accept and face reality with grace when we connect deeply with ourselves, our communities, and this land that we call home. Now, I have one more thing that I do want to talk about. But before I do, we need to take advantage of this community. Like you, right here, sitting here in this audience with Creative Mornings, let's connect with this community. So I'm going to use, I have my chimes here, and I'm going to give you 1 minute. And when your 1 minute is up, then I'm going to ask for you to be silent, and then I'll finish, and then we'll open with questions. But I'm going to ask you to talk to your neighbor, and if you don't know your neighbor, even better. You can say hi. You can say whatever you would like, but I've given you a little script here. Hi, today I'm connecting with, choose one. You can say myself, the community, the land, by, and what are you doing? And just meet your neighbor. So I'll give you 1 minute, and then I'll chimes, then we'll ask for silence, and I'll close. Thank you. Go ahead. I felt the energy in the here and now. So I like metaphors. I also like symbols. So I'm going to end with a symbol, the infinity symbol. So we might feel like the challenges in front of us are infinitely big. But I'd like to end with this. The more we accept reality, yes, the more the weight that we will feel, but the more that we lead with love and connect deeply with each other, with ourselves, with the land, the lighter we feel, the more that we can act, and then the more that we can accept. So I hope we can all face reality with grace for ourselves, our communities, and our land. Thank you.
So I've known you for almost 20 years. And one of the coolest things about you, from our university days straight through, weaving in and out of seeing each other over years, is you never seem to settle on a singular idea of like, this is who I am and this is where I am. You always seem to be like developing and learning and growing. And I was just wondering what drives that sort of constant evolution of your identity and who you are in this moment in time.
Amazing question, Jessie. So what keeps me going, or like keep growing? I think it's just a healthy frame to have of like, I don't want to settle with just saying I'm a sustainability consultant or I'm this, because I change over time. And so to like surrender to that of like what there's two things. There's like a direction where I want to go, and then there's a direction that is pulling me into something. And if I can surrender into that, it's like enriching and a fun way to live, I guess.
So we talk about bridge building, connecting with people. Over the last couple of years, we've heard we're all in this together, let's stick together, one goal, this and that. I'm sure a lot of people in this audience and in our community are exhausted by that messaging, right? There is a lot of talk and no action behind those words. So what do you say to people that are feeling exhausted by this like leading by love type of messaging?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It is exhausting. And, you know, I think it's a personal choice, and that's why I feel like that reframe is so important. I'm not saying don't think that these challenges aren't important. I'm saying absolutely accept those, but how you personally have to frame that within yourself so that you don't just get, bogged down each time. And if you look at leaders in the past who have gone through immense struggles, they don't just like cave when the going gets tough. They find something in themselves that just kind of helps to keep them going. And so lead with love is my personal reframe for me to keep it going. But I think it's going to be an ongoing struggle. But if you turn towards fear and, being just exhausted by it all and just put your head in the sand, that's not going to help anybody either. And so you have to find the reframe that works for yourself.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
My name is Kat, and I've known Jane for a long time, since high school. We're both from Thunder Bay. Okay, so we work in a similar world. I'm a marine scientist, but I'm a science communicator. And I'm just wondering if you could, it's kind of similar to what you were talking about, but so I'm really burnt out, and super pissed off. Because all I do is talk about climate change for the last 20 years and nothing happens. So I'm wondering if you have tips on how to kind of shift from that anger and burnout to love, because I'm a funny, kind person, but I find it real hard to do that. So I'm wondering how do you do it, Jane?
Oh, Kat. I think so much of it is here, and I think to lead with love, we have to go down. And it was actually an Indigenous elder that someone had a story that someone had shared with me. It's like the longest journey you'll ever take is the one from your head to your heart. And it's spiritual, mids, which she doesn't want to hear. But I think, to be in anger, it's because there's so much that I think and about what's wrong. And you still have to know all of that, but when I go deeper in, I can break apart some of that anger and let my heart or my spirit lead in a certain way. So I'm not just thinking about the stats, even though I know the stats, I'm shifting it. But I think there's still room for anger. I don't want to say we should only lead with love. I still think that sometimes there's room for us to be angry about things, and that might move us to act. It's just a question of if you are personally burnt out from it all, why I'm saying zoom in and go on that inner journey, figure out what you need to keep going. And that's going to be different for everybody.
Hi everyone. Good morning. I wanted to expand on your question about exhaustion. And one thing my friend told me that really resonated with me was start, stop, continue. So at the end of the day, at the end of a project, you kind of say, okay, what went well? What can I continue doing? What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What's kind of not efficient in this process? So I wanted to share that with you all today. And then my question for you is, it's kind of a personal, ethereal thing. I want to know how you would describe the feeling of the nature in Thunder Bay, if you can do that. Yeah.
It's interesting. I actually was going to talk a little bit about that. When I talked about focus and how there are two realities in Thunder Bay. And so I feel the deep appreciation for nature there. It's beautiful. There is so much local energy in terms of businesses and creativity and a lot of really beautiful connections that happen in Thunder Bay. And there's also a reality that is ugly and shameful and deeply racist. And there's a lot of information out there now. There's a podcast, there's a TV show on Crave about Thunder Bay, and that is a real reality. And so we have to accept both. It's one doesn't cancel out the other. I still love Thunder Bay. I still love the creativity that's there, but definitely having focus on Thunder Bay in its ugliest form is hopefully shedding light on an issue that is, generational, and that we put light on it so that we can change it. I'm referring to Thunder Bay specifically has a lot of racism within its police force and Indigenous youth going missing and disappearing in a river. And so it has a really painful history that has been documented quite extensively now.
Hello. What bogs you down or makes you the most angry or weighs the heaviest on you today? And how do you overcome that? How do you reframe it now?
I mean, I have 2 kids under the age of 5. So on a daily basis, I get the... And it's actually funny. My son, he learns breathing techniques at school. And so he'll be like, Mom, do the 5-finger breathing. And I'm like, I mean, all of this still bogs me down. On a daily basis, all of this still bogs me down. I think the idea that I'm doing something about it helps. Makes it feel like I'm in the right career path. I'm doing something. Sometimes just taking a break from it helps. I love little babies' cries. It's all good. And I'll be honest, I feel like the missing piece that I have is a daily meditation practice, and I'm about to start like a more serious daily meditation practice because I think that is the key to unlocking so much in terms of when something bogs you down that you are really well grounded. So I'm working on it. It's a journey.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much.